Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good evening. Indigenous Ways acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Turtle Island and pays its respect to their elders past and present. We would like to take this time to acknowledge traditional owners and ancestors of these lands we reside on here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. There are 19 pueblos all around us. And wherever you are beaming in from, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and ancestors of the lands you come from so we could all be here today. Indigenous Ways is dedicated to bridging cultural exchange with people globally. We have been hosting Indigenous Ways virtual events, and we have been able to support over 90 Indigenous presenters. All of our events have ASL interpreters and are free. Thank you all for your support that has kept this platform going. And our mission is to take away the walls of separation colonization has done to our peoples. By doing that, we are helping each other, we are bridging with each other, we are thinking in collective terms. So this evening, we are so very, very, very blessed to have our very first in all 90 plus presenters, our elder Auntie Joanne Wilmot, who is beaming in from Adelaide, Australia. Auntie Jo was born in Schoberg, Queensland. Auntie Jo is the practice manager, Aboriginal programs, relationships in Southern Australia. She's a respected Waka Waka woman from Queensland who has lived in Adelaide for more than 40 years. I want to go on and on about Joanne, but I don't want to take any more time than we have. We have our beautiful auntie for 30 minutes. So let's welcome Joanne Wilmot. Woo! All
Woo!
right, Joanne, please tell us about yourself.
Okay. First of all, I have to recognize that I am a conduit for all that exists, all that is, and all that we need to be. And that my relationship with my ancestors and all of our ancestors is important in regards to my responsibility and reporting back to them about the work that they started since the first sunrise. And I walk in that with some humility, but also with dignity, and I honour what it is that they've given to me. I, along with many millions of people, walk in the spirit of that work and have a huge responsibility. So it's an honour, but it also is a burden. But it is a responsibility where we have to continue the practice of reciprocity and mutuality, of giving and taking, but presenting and loving and caring from the heart and with the spirit. And we have to recognise that we are not an entity into ourselves. I am the component of many different places, people, spirits, the past, the present, and the future. And I honour that, not as an individual, because I, as an individual, am not important. It's what I do and say that actually should reverberate around what my contribution has to be while I have the honour of working and walking with the ancestors on the earth today.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Auntie Jo. So how did you come to be in South Australia?
I left, I came from Queensland, and I was a member of the Stolen Generations. Now, if people, I don't know whether people know about the Stolen Generations in Australia, but we were people who were taken from our parents, a bit like the residential schools that were set up in Great Turtle Island. We here were taken from our parents, put into missions and reserves and settlements, and they set up institutions where children were then taken from their parents in those institutions and missions and reserves and put into girls and boys dormitories or orphanages, so that they could send the parents of the children out as indentured slave labourers in Queensland and all over Australia. They sent them out and told the children that their parents had left them, they didn't love them, they didn't care about them, and they were lucky to be with the institution because their parents would have otherwise neglected them. And what happened with those parents were they were sent out for a whole year to work on various properties, various people's homes, raising other people's children. These neglectful parents actually were cleaning, taking care of, nurturing, nourishing non-Aboriginal people's children and their families. And it was only when I got older that I realised how emotionally depraved that was, in the context of we as Aboriginal people were blamed for the plight of being dysfunctional, violent, brutal people. They couldn't even refer to us as humans. We were considered, up until 1967, wards of the state. So we came under the guardianship of the governments of the day, and they could do whatever it is they wanted. And in those missions and reserves, if people wanted to leave the mission to go and do shopping outside of it or to visit other relatives elsewhere, they needed to apply for a permit. And a permit was a piece of paper that you must carry with you wherever you went to ensure that you were in the right place where you said that you were going to go. And it was constantly, you were constantly on check. So that's a bit of the history. And for me, growing up in Queensland, in Cherbourg Mission and in the Cherbourg Girls' Dormitory, my mother decided at the age when I was 13, and I'd only just met her briefly, so I didn't really know her, that she was taking her children out of those institutions in 1967 when they opened up the borders of all those missions and reserves, those refugee camps, I called them, and settlements, and allowed Aboriginal people to have the freedom to live outside of those incarcerated zones. And so the problem then was, where do Aboriginal people live? If you don't have money, if you don't have a job, how do you then integrate yourself into a Western environment, because you haven't been given all of those skills? So we moved out of the mission, and there was a group of people called One People of Australia League, and the first Aboriginal senator was a man called Neville Bonner, and in the 60s and early 70s, he set up a One People of Australia League, and they were in Ipswich, where I'd moved to, which was a big township near Brisbane. And he took me under his wing at the age of 13, and I used to attend these meetings with him and a couple of Aboriginal people and all these non-Aboriginal people who were caring and wanted to make a change and challenge the systems and dismantle those oppressions that we had to deal with. And I went to high school, and it was very racist. I felt very vulnerable, but there was no way of sharing that information with my parents because they had no way of dealing with all of that. They were so subjugated when they were institutionalised that to speak out against white governments and against the white oppression, they felt that they could create more problems. So I decided I would leave Queensland and move to South Australia. I came to South Australia, which was a bit more of a freer state, but we know what freedom is when you're Indigenous. It does not exist. And there are just different ways of subjugating people, covertly and overtly. And I think it was more covert in South Australia, at least in Queensland. I said, if someone was going to shoot you, they'd stand in front of you and hold a gun to your head. given all of that, there's a whole lot of different situations that Aboriginal people have had to live with. There were people who were able to escape that system. There were people who accepted an exemption from being Aboriginal, which meant that you weren't Aboriginal anymore. You didn't mix with your families or other Aboriginal peoples, and you had to live as a non-Aboriginal person and enjoy the spoils and benefits of what that meant. So apart from removing people off their country, they removed their children, and then they moved adults and families from one place to the other, could be thousands of miles away, a bit like the Trail of Tears that I had the pleasure of travelling up. And it certainly brought tears to my eyes because I could resonate with the ancestors there and feel their pain on walking that arduous journey that disconnected and dismantled their way of being connected back to their ancestors and country and all that exists to keep them alive. So that's the same as what happened here. So the same narrative, the same practices, the same infrastructure and systems and scaffolding were set up exactly the same way to oppress and diminish us and deplete us. And they were hoping that's one way of getting rid of us. When I came to South Australia, it was after 1967, the referendum, when we were free to live openly as humans in our own country. And it was when all the Aboriginal groups around the country started to talk about what do we want, what do we do, and how do we do it. There was an organisation called FCATSI, the Federal Council of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander People. It was a national organisation that was set up in the 50s by Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people, talking about freeing up Aboriginal people and pushing towards the referendum around Aboriginal people's freedoms and to be recognised. And after FCATSI dissolved, there was an establishment of a whole lot of Aboriginal organisations around the country. The first one was the Red Fern Legal Service in Sydney, which then spread its tentacles out to support other states around Australia and territories to establish their own Aboriginal organisations, in particular their legal services and health services and childcare agencies, all of those things that we needed to support Aboriginal people in adjusting to a new way of life and a new way of living. Employment services, government services, etc. And I joined the Aboriginal legal rights movement as a receptionist, and very foreign concept to me, because in the mission we didn't have Aboriginal people in those kinds of office positions.
Right.
And to be acknowledged as someone who could contribute like white people do in their offices and run these services, etc. So for me, it was a giddy time. There was a lot of wonderful conversations from non-Aboriginal people and Aboriginal people who cared enough about the spirit of humanity that they wanted to make a change and challenge the systems that perpetuated the myth of subjugation of Aboriginal people as non-human. And it was a really exciting time. It was also a very scary time in the sense that there was so much going on. You had Martin Luther King in America, you had the American Indian movement, you had the Vietnam War. So globally, there was all in the West, from the Western construct, you had all of these things going on that I guess empowered and supported Aboriginal people around, we need to take this and move forward with this. So there were lots of really amazing people who did amazing things in spite of the limitations that were put on them. I believe that we thought that once we established the framework to be able to make a real difference and to live in peace and harmony for the future, that we thought we'd made it within those first 10 years after the 1967 referendum. And it's really sad to talk about Tash and Elena were here when there was the establishment and the start of the intervention, yes, where Aboriginal men were considered perpetrators of child sexual abuse and also running pedophile rings in communities. So the government of the day instituted precedences by suspending the Human Rights Act to be able to do the intervention, send all of the Defence Forces, the bureaucrats out to every Aboriginal community around the country to change the way they were going to live, i.e. take them off wages and pensions and give them a green card where they weren't allowed to spend money on pornography, alcohol, drugs, etc., and also to stop pedophilia. Now, if that was the solution to it, I think we could have actually wiped that out a long time ago. It was another way of subjugating Aboriginal people and putting them back in their place and diminishing their spirit because they'd gained so much in regards to land rights and a whole lot of other things, setting up homelands so that they could sit back on country and start practicing all of their land management practices, doing ceremonies, passing on knowledge, law ceremonies, teaching children about life as their ancestors would have been living, etc. So this intervened in a whole lot of ways in regards to what we had established over time in such a short amount of time to revive the spirit of country and to sing it back up and to also dance softly on country to the heartbeat of our ancestors' womb and her heartbeat, that we would emanate and resonate with all of that so that we could become one. But it was not to be, and unfortunately with any struggle, then there are divisive loyalties, so non-Aboriginal people coming in, selecting certain Aboriginal people to be the leadership. I'm sure you can resonate with that in your communities around then creating these divisions and struggles amongst our own communities and family members. We also have a law here that talks about native title. That's what Aboriginal people can be offered, and it's about setting up agreements about land use, etc., in relation to industry, mining companies, and other stakeholders and groups on country. So you don't really get the freedom to choose and be on country the way you would have liked in respect to why it is that you required that land in the first place to revive all of those cultural values and to maintain all of those songs and all of the spirit of the legacy of our ancestors. So I believe I was in a very privileged and honoured place. I was then invited in the late 70s, early 80s, up to the Arnong Pindara Yankundara lands in Central Australia. And I guess a lot of people would know Uluru, yes, previously known by the white fella's name. The coloniser's name was Ayers Rock. Prior to that, it was Uluru, Kata National Park. And I went and lived and worked and danced and sang and was told stories. And I slept on the earth at night looking up into that deep, dark sky with the stars and the blessings of the ancestors pouring into us every evening. And those songs that resonated on the earth, that carried throughout all that existed. It gave renewal and reinvigoration back to the plants, the animals, the rocks, all of our ancestors that lived and breathed, and the waterways around us. It's important for us to acknowledge them. So through song and dance and storytelling, that's our way of reliving and rebirthing constantly for life to continue, but to be in a way that it's held in love and purity. And that was my first learnings from the old women. After being institutionalized, told I had no life, I didn't exist, growing up being told that we were dirty, we didn't belong, we should go back to where we came from. My honouring was when the first older woman who said to me, "You're coming with me to country," I had no idea. And to be able to be sung into the spirit of that world was something that I wish every man, woman and child could actually have, because that centered me, but it also made me feel that I had a responsibility now. It wasn't just I had rights. I actually had to prove and contribute and continue to make improvements and to ensure that I challenged and changed what needed to happen for all of us. And I may not get it right, but it doesn't mean that I don't stop trying. So that's where I guess the heart and soul and the source is the ancient university that held my spirit, invited me in, and created the space for me to recognize I am of this whole spirit world. Yes. I am of this old physical world. I am of the heart and soul and the essence and the source of all of our ancestors in life. And I carry that. I have to honor it. It's not the talk, it is the walk. Yes. And when I come in touch with my sisters and brothers who hold that spirit, I too honor and embrace them in that place.
Oh, thank you. Okay, everybody, take some deep breaths. This is really the true source of the Aboriginal people of Australia. Auntie Jo with us this evening has a lot of juxtapositions with the Native Americans of Turtle Island, with the school system, the institutionalization, the colonization. So, Auntie Jo, is there a solution to the atrocities from colonization? If so, what are the remedies?
We need to look within ourselves. We need to sit on Mother Earth. We need to start noticing all our brothers and sisters, the waterways, what's flying in the skies, what's creeping along the earth, what's walking on top of the earth, what's emanating from the earth to give us all life. We need to notice that humans are damaging one another. We need to look at ourselves and what the spirit of all of that exists is a part of who we are. And we have to acknowledge that part and see that we have to walk gently on the earth, but walk with healing, with love, with harmony, with honour, with integrity, with dignity. We need to take our children. We need to see them as our blessings. And they're the gift for the future that we need to hold and nurture into their becoming. I'm at the moment in the process, as I said, I've got to race off to another meeting, of sitting down with non-Aboriginal academics to talk about that juxtaposition, as you say, between traditional First Nations healing and Western methodologies, and how we need to work with that, given all of the confusion and the conflicts around what has happened historically, globally, not just for us as First Nations people, but all those people who did all of the colonisation, all of the colonialism, all of the invasions, all the despair, all the dismantling of everything that came from the source, from the ancient. We need to work together to develop and put our hearts and souls into changing our narrative, changing our practice, and accessing within the deep sources and abyss of the source, the ancient university, and all of our relations and our ancestors, to be able to give that back. So our healing, and I've been involved in this with the Stolen Generations for the last 4 or 5 years, we've had our traditional healers who come from the desert, who sit with the men and women who have been damaged by the process of colonialism, but also being stolen and being rejected and disjointed and confused and just broken in respect to what's happened to them, holding them in a culturally safe space to be able to see that they are of value. If you don't acknowledge the spirit and its value, you're not acknowledging the whole. So we take people on a camp and we do all of this taking care of, nurturing, supporting, nourishing, and then we have the healers sitting side by side with the Western trained psychologists, psychoanalysts, counsellors, mediators, etc., to work in harmony and unison to heal the spirit and the soul of the individual, as well as all of the people, that they can recognise and see when they leave, they come out just a little bit connected back to who they really should be.
Thank you, Auntie Jo. I've got to tell you, when I've been to your lands and have been and welcomed by your ancestors and your people, I have not met a more beautiful people on this planet. And then I come back here where we're sitting right now on the Pueblo lands. I want you to try to come here and meet the Pueblo people and go to their ceremonies. They're just as nice and welcoming and beautiful as the Aboriginals. There's talk about juxtaposition, peaceful, peaceful people. It's beautiful. And I just in honoring with your time, Auntie Jo, our theme this at this time is thriving in purpose. What does that mean for you and your people in this time right now? What is thriving in purpose?
Well, it depends, because for our people, it could mean that the government's told us that we've got to reconcile with them. And we've got to do all these things that acknowledge non-Indigenous people's pain. I think we need to let non-Indigenous people know, and non-First Nations people know, they live with far more pain than we do, because they've carried it for thousands of years before they hit our lands and they infected our communities and our countries and our peoples. So unless we bring them on board, we're not creating a part of the whole and our healing. But for Aboriginal people, it is about trying to find some peace. There's an opportunity at the moment. The government funded a conversation with Aboriginal peoples from all over Australia to come together in Central Australia a few years ago to talk about what is it that people will look. Now, these were selected people who were brought together to attend the event and talk about what they wanted. And it was a 3-day event. So there were people from all over Australia who were brought together to have conversations and workshop what their needs were. It was facilitated by a group of people called the Referendum Council. And this is people who wanted to have a referendum around acknowledging Aboriginal people. And they claimed that as part of that referendum, that workshop, Aboriginal people agreed to a voice to Parliament, truth-telling and treaty. And the majority of the Aboriginal people at that event said you cannot have a voice to Parliament, gives us no economic or political or social power in this country. But we need to go back to the source. We need to talk about truth-telling, a bit like what happened in Canada and what happened in South Africa around truth-telling. If we're going to make any real difference or any change, we need to have those conversations. And then whatever comes out of those conversations changes the way we do things in the future. And we're waiting for that in respect to what's going to happen. Most of all, people wanted to see themselves as sovereign individuals and tribal groups, language groups, who would have power and influence over their ancestors' land to do what they feel they have to continue as a legacy from their ancestors and improve their own situations in their communities and in their... Unfortunately, there's a lot of conversation about a referendum just for a voice to Parliament, because that's the least invasive of them all. So I think that for a lot of Aboriginal people, like there would be any person on this globe who aren't woke, who haven't reached into the source, who aren't familiar with the experiences, the language, the narratives, they just feel the oppressive regime that take away from them being able to think clearly about what's going on in their lives. And that's the way the system wants us to be. So the struggle continues. That's a race of people who've been through so many confusing acts of divisions and loyalties that they're not really sure what they're doing. So it is finding a way to get people to sit silently with the ancestors on country, feeling the earth, knowing the sun shines, the rain pours, the storms rage. However, we can always find a place of peace in all of that. And I don't think we have enough people at the moment to do that, but we've got to...
Auntie Joe, it looks like we're losing a little bit of communication for the voice. So we know you've got to get to where you've got to go. And we want you to know that our prayers are with you, with your people, with your ancestors. We love you. We'd love for you to hook us up with some of your Aboriginal healers to put them on our show starting in August. We'll be taking a 2-month sabbatical and running reruns, and we'll talk about that. So thank you so much for your time this evening, Auntie Joe, and this has been a real blessing.
I can barely hear you because I'm now in my car driving into my meeting, I noticed that you noticed that and had a little smile, Elena, that I was getting in my car. But thank you for the honour and the privilege. And we all have a role to play, and we all have to reach into that well of love that our ancestors started from and carry that with an open heart and an open spirit to challenge and change what should happen, and it will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Auntie Jo. Let's
So
give it up for
let's give it up for Auntie Jo and
blessing us in the circle.
We
We'll
love
see
you.
you soon, Auntie Jo, hopefully down your end.
Yeah, we
Or
want
you
to come
up
back.
here.
We want to come back.
All right. We love you. Be safe and all the best with that meeting. And thank you for being with us.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Love you.
big.
Love you. All right, everybody. That was Auntie Jo, Joanne Wilmot. She has been an activist since a long time, and she walks with the ancestors. And we're just going to take this time to invite.
Well, just before we invite everyone in, I just want you to kind of meditate with these incredible words of wisdom from Auntie Jo, a Waka Waka woman coming in from South Australia. She was off for her first meeting, as you saw in there. Talk about a powerhouse, eating breakfast, speaking to us on the way to this amazing meeting where she was talking about the healing within her community with what she's doing. So I want you to kind of, if you have questions or want to process, we're going to invite you in a few minutes, but I just want to tell you what's coming up. Next week, which finishes the end of May, we've got the beautiful Dennis Long, who will be joining us from Dene country or the Navajo Nation. He is a traditional weaver, so he'll be sharing his wisdoms in the circle. That is Wednesday the 26th, same time, same channel here. And as you can see, if you want to know more or see more with Auntie Joanne, because we took a clip before we started, and we'll put that on the end. But if you want to see more of all the over 90 Indigenous, Native American, deaf and hard of hearing, and also artists that we've had through the Indigenous Ways virtual events, you can go to our website, IndigenousWays.org. There in the video library, you'll be able to see them all. If you need to go back and take these incredible words from Auntie Jo, she'll be in there in the next 24 hours. If you're on our social media at the moment, please be sure to like those pages that you're on. Or if you're watching the tomorrow's view of this yesterday, if that made sense, be sure that you like or subscribe. We send out a newsletter every week. If you want to know what's going on, be sure to go to our website, IndigenousWays.org. We would not be able to do this without our incredible sponsors, so I want to give them a shout out. That is to the Native American Advice Fund, the Santa Fe Community Foundation, WestAF, New Mexico Arts, and also the Rio Grande National Heritage Area that we're very grateful to. Also to you, our individual donors that have kept us going since the 1st of April 2020, having these electronic circles. We are super grateful to our ASL interpreters. Today we have Sandra, who is here with us at the moment, and also Tristan, making access available to all, as well as all of these events have been free. So we're very grateful for that. As a lot of you know, we are going on our 12th relief run to Black Mountain, where Tasha's from, her people. We're also looking at a water project there, but during COVID, thanks to you on this platform, we've been able to raise $150,000, taking that, doing emergency supplies, PPE, and also this year, we started the Deaf and Hard of Hearing relief run to the Four Corners of what we found out. A lot of deaf and hard of hearing community members were missing out either because of transport or communication. So thanks to you, we've been able to make that possible. If you are able to donate, you can go to either our webpage, IndigenousWays.org, or snail mail and so forth.
All right. With that being said, I just want to go back to Auntie Joe. How we met Auntie Joe. This is a really interesting story.
So while Tasha's sharing the story, if you're in our Zoom and you want to turn on your camera, you need to weigh in or just process what Auntie Joe shared, feel free to turn on your camera. If you're in any of our social media networks, bang in, or that means type up, a question or comment that you may have in social media that we can share it here. Just remember, if you're coming in on the circle, all of this is getting streamed out as well as recorded in our archives. If that's not a problem, come on in. Anyway, sorry, Tash, you were saying.
So yeah, everybody come on in if you're comfortable. We'd love to see you. We're gonna just see if anybody's got anything to say. But there's so much to say about the Aboriginal people of Australia, how we got to know Auntie Joe. On one of our tours through Australia, we basically land into a Sydney airport, get a rental car, and hit the road. And we're talking like 11,000 kilometers is a road trip for me and Elena in Australia. I'm not sure what the miles equate to, but it's a lot. It's 11,000 kilometers. So what happens is one Aboriginal person finds out that we're there in DigiFem, the name of our duo, and she takes us she contacts us and says, "Where are you going?" So we tell her all of our tour stops through those 11,000 miles, and this Aboriginal auntie hooks us up with radio stations, places to stay, communities of Aborigines, and each time we stop in one Aboriginal uh, original people's homeland, they hook us up with more people. So then by the time we're finished with our tour, we have met like 50 to 100 Aboriginal people. We've been to their ceremonies. We've been honored by them. We've been fed by them, housed by them, love them. So Auntie Joe is in Adelaide, and we got her name and number from an Aboriginal radio host in Cairns. That's Cairns, Cairns, Australia. So he gives us her contact info. We get to her house, and she has a home with a granny flat. It's like what we would call here as like a second home. You know how, so she's got a granny flat and puts us up. And then she continues to hook us up with her people. So that's the way it works in Australia. So if you ever go to Australia and hook up with the Aboriginal people, they will hook you up through the country. You will be fed. You will have free places to stay. And you'll get to go to ceremonies. And they'll tell you how to act properly as well. The protocol of the Aboriginal people. They're intense. They're beautiful. And they love, love, love. So, hello, everybody. Who wants to
So,
start?
in saying that, while people are thinking, I just want to go to social media. We've got Judy Shapiro in Maryland.
Judy, Tacoma Park,
And
Washington.
she says,
Maryland.
inspiring. We've got Janie Immerman from New York going, thank you. Great prayers in the icon. And also Mary Sue Adler Gilbert says, brilliant spiritual feeling. Thank you.
All right. It's been a long time, Christina Bueno. How you doing, Christina? Good to see you. Did you enjoy the show?
I did. I did. It was so powerful. It was an incredibly powerful presentation. Wow, I'm so impressed. Um, and just looking at the similarities between Indigenous people here and Aboriginal people in Australia, and how they love and respect the earth, as well as just her comments and wisdom about the ancestors. The ancestors are the reason that we're here. And so when she brought up the comment about the ancestors, it actually made me think about when I went on vacation to Mexico. And I had the opportunity to meet Indigenous people there. And Indigenous people that were in my tribe, which is the Zacatas tribe. I so very much, enjoyed it, looked forward to my time, as well as connecting with my ancestors as well, in that same way that Auntie Jo was talking about it. I feel that I've connected with my ancestors as well, and I am very much looking forward to this time. Just a moment for the interpreter.
I'm happy to be back here.
So actually, if the interpreter can make a correction, my vacation is this July. I will be in Mexico. So I'm looking forward to this upcoming vacation. I haven't taken care of my passport yet, but I'm very much excited to go on this trip here in a couple of months.
Wow, that is awesome. We're looking forward to hearing all about it, and we'd love for you to stop in and see us in Santa Fe if you can, and maybe we can go visit Arletta in Lukachukai, and that's L-U-K, and Arletta is with us tonight also, so that's awesome.
Thanks so much for that,
Yes,
Christina.
thank
It's
you.
great to see you, and thank you for those great words that you shared.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's Sarah, how's it going? Sarah, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And wow, Auntie Jo, I mean, it's just so amazing, this technology that can sometimes be intimidating, but it's amazing that we can connect in this way, all these thousands of miles away. And I was really struck with the parallels of, the oppression, the way that the degradation of the people, very similar tactics. And it's shameful. I mean, I'm European ancestry, and it's horrific. But I do believe, and one of the things that stuck out for me with what she said is the truth telling. We have to do that. We have to do that as a nation. We have to acknowledge our history as it really happened, not as the storybook that most of us heard in grade school, to really start telling the truth about what's happened. Then we can go forward. But until we're honest, we're still in this cycle of violence and, oppression and that. So, but it was lovely to get a glimpse of her. So thank you for your work, and just sending regards to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sarah, and hopefully we're able to bring some more Aboriginal folks and what they're doing there in Aussie.
Thanks for that, Sarah. And also for what you shared. It just reminds me of a quote that I heard many years ago. And it says this from what you were talking about: when we cannot tell the truth about our past, we become stuck in it. So that truth telling, as you were saying, as Auntie Jo mentioned, particularly with that great question that Tash asked, in regards to healing. How do we heal from the atrocities of colonizations? Is there remedies? And it's the truth telling. So thank you for that.
Awesome. All right, let's go on to Missy, also known as Michelle. Hey, Miss.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Yes, I really enjoyed her presentation and just her commitment to joining us, because I know there is a time difference. I'm not sure what time it is over there in New Zealand.
Oh, she's in Australia. It's 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday.
Oh, okay. 9 a.m.?
10.
10 a.m. Oh, okay. Well, at least she was able to call during Zoom in during a decent hour. And so I just, I've heard the story from other Aborigines of what happened. And it's a very sad story. And I agree with Sarah that there's a lot of parallel to how the Native Americans were treated in similar way to the Aborigines. And I think it's good that people are telling their stories and correcting the history books, so that people really understand the things that happen, so that we can have a understanding of the historical trauma that's taken place for many oppressed cultures, and how these oppressed cultures are surviving and thriving irrespective of the things that were done to their ancestors, and finding a way to heal and move forward. And so I was really very grateful that she was able to be very honest about what happened and what she experienced, and you know, and to share her history with us. So
Thank you for that, Missy.
Right on, Missy. Appreciate what you shared.
We
Thank
love you. We'd like to invite Annette to say some words, if you'd like to say some words with us this evening. Oh, can't hear you, Annette.
Oh, there
Still
it is.
can't. There
I
we go.
couldn't find the mute button.
Ah,
But no, I really enjoyed the speaker, and you know, I really love what she had to say, and like I always say, I'm grateful just to be in these meetings, just to hear the different things that are going on, and I'm grateful for um what's going on the other side of the world, and that's all I have to say. Thanks.
all right, Annette. Thank you very much. And lastly, we have one more sister on the screen that I can see right now, and that's Arletta. Hi, Arletta. I see you're driving, Arletta. Do you want to say anything?
Hi. Yes, hello. It's all good here. Uh, I'm on my cell phone. It's freezing just a little bit. I'm missing a lot of what's being said. So I'm on my cell phone. It's just bad signal here, but that's okay for now.
Good to see you, Arletta. We'll be seeing you in a few days. We'll be seeing you next week, Tuesday, in Lukachukai. That's LUK for our interpreter. All
So,
right, we wanted to.
so thank you everyone for braving it out, turning on your cameras, or if you're in the social media, you're watching this live or the recording of this, whether that be in our archive library, IndigenousWays.org, or you're watching the archives of the social media videos. Thank you for taking the time to do that. In our library in the next 24 hours will be Auntie Joe's showing what we just saw, as well as clips that we asked questions before because we knew she was limited with time. So we're going to add that. She's talking about, what did you ask her? I forgot.
Oh my gosh, she covered so much. She just talked before the stolen generation.
Oh,
which,
that's right.
Same thing happened here with the Native American kids. They were taken from their traditional homes and put in Indian boarding schools. And the same thing happened with deaf children. They were taken from their homes and putting in deaf schools. And there's so many juxtapositions. It's not even believable. It's true though. So, but we are coming to the top of the hour. Elena, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, so thank you for that, Taj. So she goes into detail about the stolen generation in Australia. So that'll be in our archives of what we might not have seen here. We want to take the time to thank everyone. As Tash mentioned, with all the work we've been doing from the 1st of April 2020 last year and your amazing support, it's coming summer. So at the end of May, which is next week with Dennis, that will be our last live show for the next 2 months. So June and July, we're going to be doing the best of not only from the virtual events, but also taking presenters from the Indigenous Healing Festival that we just had 2 weeks ago, that we will do as we plan another incredible season for you, which will start the first Wednesday of August. So please stay tuned for that. We're really excited about that.
And check out the Wednesdays. They're going to be fabulous.
We will be going to the res next week, so we're excited about that. So Orletta, we look forward to seeing you there. We also will be seeing Dennis Long, is also our guest of honor next Wednesday. So I'm not too sure how our coverage will be because we're on the res. But anyway, we'll find out next week when we're there. Just before you read that, Tash, I also want to say thank you to everyone for your loyalty, your wonderful time, and coming to these wisdom circles so we can keep it going. Also, your ongoing support, whether that be for Black Mountain and taking the relief runs up there, and now we're looking at taking water up there. Thank you so much for making that possible, and also the deaf and hard of hearing runs that we've been doing as well. We would not be able to do that without you. So in July, we're also looking at the 1st and the 2nd of July, taking big runs up there.
Before I read the posts, I want to honor our brother Carlin. Carlin's got his hand up. Carlin, do you want to say something briefly?
Yes, I would like to say something. I don't want to show my image because I've had a long day after work and I don't look too great. So, but if you'll forgive me for that, I just wanted to say I worked till at the very beginning of your show, as I am working till that period of time. So I always am not able to tune in exactly when the show starts. So I apologize for that. However, I really admire the work that Auntie Jo is doing, just as I admire the work that both you and you guys are doing there. It's just incredible work. It's wonderful. I just wanted to say that I'm very invested in cultural diversity. Very invested in cultural diversity, and I've been investigating ways, perhaps for many years, most of my life, and how I can do my part. Sometimes it's very difficult to figure out. For those of you that know me, my image is a very specific image of an Anglo-European, and indeed my ancestry was European, from Ireland and England and places like that. Had an incident many years ago where a person, I tried to befriend a person, and then they wouldn't befriend me, and I finally asked the person, this is a person of color, what the issue was, and what the issue turned out to be. She told me, she said, I looked like the enemy, which really impacted me because I wasn't her enemy at all. But I really dissected that over the years and come to realize that so often on everybody, to some degree, we look at each other and perhaps try to categorize or try to stereotype each other. And nothing could be further from the truth. We're all very much individuals. And so my particular effort at this time, and one of the reasons I love watching your program is it gives me lots of ideas, is that I can figure out ways to connect with people without being considered the enemy, so to speak. And it's been wonderful since I've been able to return to New Mexico, my home state, where diversity exists, and I can have friends of all colors and all different backgrounds, and not be held accountable for the atrocities of my ancestors. And they were definite atrocities, there's no doubt about it. So I just wanted to say to you, Tasha and Lena, thank you so much for providing me the opportunity to be able to glean ideas from your shows on how I can better connect with people, and not on a basis where they don't stereotype me, so much. And I definitely don't stereotype people whatsoever. Those of you that know me know that. But I think that's where we get into trouble. We stereotype each other based on what we look like, or based on a language we perhaps hear that's not familiar to us. And we just need to all stop doing that and respect each other as the human beings that we are. We're all equal on this planet. Just wanted to add that. I hope it wasn't too much.
Thank you, Carlin. That
Right
is
on,
so
Carlin.
beautiful. Thank you all very much. And I just want to say, Donna, would you like to say a quick hello? You're good. We love you, Donna. Thank you for supporting us and being there for us. We're going to continue Wednesday next week. We've got Dennis Long. We're very excited. And I just want to honor the words from Abby. Abby says, this is very moving to hear the parallels between the Indigenous experiences on both continents, half a world apart. We had Tarini Pendleton. To everyone, thank you. Joining from the Tonga lands. Tongava lands, that's Pacific Island. Beautiful, thank you.
California.
That's California? Okay,
Yeah.
California, sorry. What do I know, right? Okay, so Christina Bueno, to everyone, thank you for the wonderful ASL interpreters. Thank you for saying that, Christina Bueno. We love you for saying that, because we sure appreciate our ASL interpreters too. Thank you all, everybody. It's been a blast. Tune in next Wednesday. We are going to be beaming in probably from the Kitzili chapter house on top of Black Mountain. We're going to have to ask them to let us into their Wi-Fi from the chapter house. So check us out next week. Dennis Long, don't miss out on a two-spirit traditional weaver. He's going to rock our world. Love you guys. Have a great night.
Yeah, let's give it up to our ASL interpreters. Woo! We've got Tristan. We've also got the beautiful Chandra. And then the last one, even though she's not here, but here in spirit, as she said, most importantly, what's the most important thing that we can do is healing ourselves. So please, let's give it up for Auntie Joanne Woman.
Woman of passion, woman of passion.